Hello, everyone. I'm Chris from Airline Information. Welcome to our webinar on payment reconciliation with Up in the Air and MNC.Aero as our sponsor. So welcome, everyone. Couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any trouble seeing us, log out of GoTo and come back. It's usually an internet connection issue. And if you would like to submit questions, please put them into the questions box in the GoTo control panel. With that, I'll introduce Paul Van Alphen from Up in the Air, who will be our moderator today. And I'll let you introduce the panel. So thanks, Paul. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you for the early start on your side of the planet. So my name is Paul van Alphen, and I'm an independent consultant in the airline travel payment space. And I have the pleasure today of welcoming four guests on the topic of airline payment reconciliation. And while preparing for this session, I realized this is probably the first time that we do a session online, bringing a group of peers together on this particular topic. And for me, payment reconciliation is where the front office and the back office meet. It's kind of a handover, but it's more than that, and we'll come to that later. Also, reconciliation plays a key role when it comes to innovation, enabling innovation at the front end. We've seen over the years many new forms of payment, many new ways of accepting payments, if it's split payments, if it's multi-currency payments, if it's subscription payments, but they all affect the back office and the reconciliation process as well. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce first the speakers of today. So maybe from my screen, from left to right, Joanna, if you would like to start.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Paul, and thank you very much to Airline Information for setting this up so early in the morning on their side. So my name is Joanna Thibault. I lead the commercials at MNC.Aero. I'm responsible for the sales, the partnerships, the communication and marketing, and making sure that our product strategy meets market needs, right? My background is travel IT. Most of my career, I would say 99% of my career has been spent in travel IT with a peculiar interest on the financial flows for airlines. So really working at the intersection of financial operations and travel flows. Reconciliation, as you said, Paul, is one of these topics that keep on coming, but is still a little bit underestimated and undervalued. And I'm really glad we can spend a bit of time today working on this topic and sharing the scene with my colleagues, Anna, Charlotta, and Gustav, and yourself, Paul, as you're all experts. So I hope we can share both a strategic view, but also the hands-on expertise. So I really welcome the questions as well from the audience.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you. So Anna, good afternoon to you from Manila in the
Good morning
Philippines.
to everyone. And yes, I'm in Asia. I'm from the Philippines. My name is Anna Bengzon, and I'd like to thank Paul, Joanna, and Chris for the opportunity to join in this panel. I'm from Philippine Airlines. Philippine Airlines is a full-service carrier operating from the Philippines. Our route network covers 70 destinations. We distribute across all platforms. Our direct channels have been growing in importance. Still have a lot of GSAs, and so we still have a number of indirect channels, and also we've started with NDC last year. I think from a finance perspective, I'm not an airline person. I only joined the airline 3 years ago. So I come in without any airline background, but I am a finance executive, been a CFO across many different industries in the Philippines. So I think coming into Philippine Airlines, I think I sort of brought in this different lens, which probably is why we are here today. So more on that later on. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Anna. And we have a duo presentation today, Charlotta and Gustav. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Charlotta and I'm from SAS, Scandinavian Airlines. I'm responsible in the airline for the customer offering of all forms of payment, sitting within finance, but working closely with many other stakeholders within the airline. Amongst them, Gustav, you might introduce yourself as well.
Absolutely. Gustav Bolinder, heading payment solutions within IT at SAS. So payment solutions in how we organize ourselves is both the internal gateway, the offering of payment methods to the customers, and then we have sales reporting, reconciliation, and also revenue accounting. We keep that within one bigger team to have the end-to-end responsibility for services. Been about 25 years in airline tech, different domains, in this for 5 years.
Yeah. And I've been within payments within airlines for about 12 years now, so not as long as you, Gustav, in the airlines, but quite long. When it comes to the airline SAS, I think we have a little bit of a similar description as you gave, Anna. We're a network airline selling broadly across different continents, mainly Europe, where Scandinavia is our biggest markets. We sell in the US as well as in the Asian region. So a network airline in its traditional way, both direct sales and indirect sales. We're entered the NDC space as well. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago now. So that is a little bit on our airline.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte and Gustav. So if we can go to the next slide, Paul. Yes, thank you so much. So let's give some background on payment reconciliation for airlines. Like I said, it's kind of a handover, but Joanna, maybe you can take us through the order to cash process, right? From all the way at the start to the end, and what are the individual steps that take place?
Thank you, Paul. I think you're right. Let's start by the definition, right? What is payment reconciliation for airlines? And I think, simply put, it's making sure that every ticket that you sell turns out into the right cash, the right amount, at the right time. So I also insist on the right time, because it's the right amount, but the right time as well on your bank account. So it's really following that flow. And we all know, I mean, I think all of the audience are experts and specialists of this. So we all know that this can get complex very quickly in the airline industry. But really, payment reconciliation for airlines is making sure we go, from left to right here on the picture, making sure that we connect all of those dots from the sales side, the bill side with your capture, the settlement side with your settlement files, and then the bank side. So making sure that at every point in time we connect the dots, we follow the transaction during the payment transaction lifetime, and we identify any discrepancies or any delays during that process. And we post that, of course, to your ledger, making sure that your books close in a nice and safe way. So I would say that payment reconciliation, it's a discipline, right? It's a discipline to be enforced, and it's basically following the money from the point of sale, from the time you sell a ticket, an auxiliary, a coffee on board, up to the bank account, going through these different steps. So I hope it summarizes it quickly, Paul.
Yeah, no, you did. And from my perspective, I've done a lot of work on the front end side, on the pay-in side, on the orchestration side of that, and a lot of new features were installed. There was also like multi-acquirer strategies were adopted, and that created more conversion, maybe lowering of cost or more redundancy, but it also put pressure on the back office to move with all those new developments, right? And I've seen that, to enable those front-end developments, you need to also make sure that the back office is in sync, that the reconciliation can keep up with that. And we're not even talking yet about what's coming, like the transformation to offer order and order accounting. Will happen over the next 5, 10, 15 years, most likely. But how do you see that the back office can keep up with the front office?
So I think it's exactly what you said, Paul. I think there's been a lot of transformation happening on the front office side, and more to come, as you say, with offer order, with NDC, which is being adopted by PAL and SAS over the last couple of years. But we need to make sure that the back office side, which is not, for me, I don't like actually the term of back office only, because this is really part of your operation globally. We need to make sure that this part keeps also tidy and safe so that the revenues you intend to collect at the forefront is duly collected and duly put on your bank account, again in a timely manner. So really this is this link, as you say, Paul, between the front and the back office, and making sure that this part of a story is not forgotten. You may have very fancy products on the front line. If in the back office side you're not following up and you're not able to basically reconcile those payments coming from a new form of payment, coming from a new acquirer, coming from new countries, then you will lose, right? So whatever you spend a lot of time doing on the front end side needs to be catered for on the back end side.
And maybe you can, Joanna, to wrap this up, give a bit of background on MNC.aero, because you come from the revenue accounting side, right? So you have this hands-on experience on dealing with these kind of exceptions and new flows. And what made you actually develop, the platform to fill this gap in the middle?
I think that's a good question, Paul. Is why on earth did we want to focus on this element, on this back office very intricate item? So I think when you look at any industry, and I will take the example of a small flower shop around the corner from your house. They sell roses, they sell tulips, but at the end of the day or at the end of the week, they close their till and they need to make sure they reconcile their payments, right? They need to make sure the payments went through, and they need to make sure the money ends up on the bank account. So that's a small flower shop, and that's fairly easy to do. But when you talk about airlines, I mean, it gets to another level. And Anna, coming from outside of industry, could see that and say, oh, my God, all very different it is. It's really at another level of complexity. Multiple distribution channels, direct, indirect, different form of payment, as we said, multiple currencies. Cross-border payments is a very, very large percentage of a business for airlines and travel. And then refunds, partial refunds, chargeback, etc. So that makes the whole flow very complex. And that is also taking place on a very high volume of transactions. So not only the tickets, but also the ancillary you collect, the ad collect, the coffee on board, etc. So transactions have demultiplied for airlines as well. So when we looked at that, and it came from years of observation of the airline industry, we said, okay, we probably can do something better in that area. Take it a little bit away from fragmented systems, fragmented views, and take a little bit away the manual workload that airlines have to put into this space. So that's what really guided us in focusing on this topic. And Paul, I just want to quickly remind the audience of something that happened last week, actually, when you and I were in Amsterdam at a very big travel payment conference. We had about 100 participants in the room, and they did a live poll, and they asked, what do you see as your biggest challenge today? And 65% of these 100 experts responded payment reconciliation. So I hope we're focusing on the right topic. I'm really glad we can give a bit of space today to that topic. And I really like to give the floor to Anna, Charlotta, and Gustav, because they are really the experts on the ground, knowing what was important for them in this project.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you so much, Joanna and Paul. We can go to the images now. Here we go. So let's dive into the operational side of things and the hands-on piece with Anna and Charlotta and Gustav. So maybe Anna, let's start with you. You're still on mute, by the way. But you already explained a little bit about your business model. But let's zoom in on maybe how are you set up from a payments perspective, and therefore also how do you need to adapt, in your project with that fast-changing front end to make to meet your goals? Because obviously every airline has its own KPIs, own goals. You fit in a certain part of the organization. Can you maybe elaborate on your project, where you come from, where you're now, where you're heading, and your project? I'll leave it open to you.
So I think when I joined PAL in 2023 was the peaking revenge travel. So volumes were just growing and growing. And typically, when I start a new company, join a new company, the first thing I do is follow the money. And so that's where I think the awareness of how complex this payment reconciliation became very, very apparent. In the case of Philippine Airlines, payment solutions revenue accounting, clearly revenue integrity is under finance and treasury. So all of that whole end-to-end process was under our responsibility in finance. And so when I looked at the volume of transactions and the evolution of payment, actually, I began to saw this issue around indirect payments were okay, right? We have BSP, we have ARC, and they were getting settled, they were reconciled. There was a system handling that. But direct payments were growing and growing. And at the time, we had 10 acquiring banks plus. So many acquiring banks. And then the process of just reconciling payments were on a manual basis. It was incredibly manual, which resulted to a lot of unapplied payments. So the money was with Philippine Airlines. I mean, clearly it was in our bank account. But whether we had 100% of it, 95%, we didn't know because we weren't able to do the manual reconciliation as quickly as we should. And I think that's how this evolved for us. From an audit perspective, clearly we can't have that kind of unapplied payment balances. Like it shouldn't happen. I'm the finance person, and that's not acceptable. Secondly, if you have any receivable issues, you can't even produce a decent statement of account because you didn't have the payment application, right? So that was the first order of business. We looked at the entire process. We knew the issue on mindset as well, that this had to be done at the ticket level. At the beginning, it seemed like I was talking alien because it was always been done on on this hot file that comes out, right? But I said, no, we've got to get it down to the ticket level due to the nuances of this business, right? There's no standard price. There's so many add-ons, and there's so many ways that you get money in different currencies. So there was just no other way but to do it at the ticket level. So that's how it started for us, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Journey of
we'll come back to your project in a bit, but let's give the floor to Charlotte and Gustav. And you have slightly different roles, right? So you contribute to the same project, but maybe you can also give some background on how it started for you, and what's your current state and what's your future state.
Yeah, so I think for us, maybe it started from a different angle, because we have for a long time been working on projects to be more agile towards our customer, to kind of expand our customer offering, having the forms of payment that the customer would prefer in our channels, in our digital channels specifically. And along that project, we always kind of recognize that we have an issue as well in the back end. So every time when we launch a new form of payment, in particular form of payment that is not card, because cards has traditionally been reconciled on batch level, but when we introduce something that is not really batch level compliant, then we realized it's totally breaking the financial backend. So me sitting in finance, looking at the front of it, the customer offering of it, my finance colleagues sitting within accounting and accounts receivable, they were really suffering from introductions of new forms of payment. So we realized if we really should scale the customer offering, we should attend to the whole process, including the end-to-end process. So it's how it started for us to make sure that we have actually an end-to-end process that fits into our strategy of being flexible and being able to offer forms of payment across markets, across new channels, across emerging payment methods.
And Gustav, anything to add from your side, from your role?
Not really on the, same kind of picture from the IT side. It's a fragmented solution across the organization. So that brings complexity and somewhat unclarity when something needs to be sort of improved or something goes wrong somewhere in the chain. So that kind of
and maybe from your perspective,
the structure there needs to be improved, and then sort of one central place for having.
And Gustav, from your perspective, so once you internally have decided, okay, we need to improve in this area, what were the different options? I mean, build in-house, or look at a vendor. What kind of vendor? Where does it fit into the ecosystem? Let's say. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that, on how that process went?
Sure. We have a sort of standardized process for evaluating a new initiative, the solutioning, and a part of it is a build versus buy process. So we did look and go quite far in the build part as well, to see if we had if it would make sense. It both not only having developers, of course, but mainly on the competence side. Do we have the competence to do a proper solution that could match the competition from suppliers out there? So, I mean, a bit fast forward, we didn't really see that as a viable option due to a few main reasons. That is, I mean, both time to market. It would take us quite some time to get that out on a level that would meet the business needs. And then, of course, cost always comes into the picture, but mainly time to market and the risk on in-house competence in how you build a system like this in a good way. Yeah.
Okay. And Joanna, I think I always see value in community like products, right, or services, because you can bring expertise together, best practices, learnings, and something you can't do if you do it by yourself, right? And also, I think you need scale to really do it properly and to maintain it. But from an MSC.Aero perspective, how do you see your role in the value chain, and how important is it, for instance, to be independent when it comes to reconciliation?
I think you're touching an important point, and I think that was a key design principle for us, right? It's to remain agnostic. We know, I mean, we all come in the company, we all come from a airline IT background, travel IT background, so we are very cognizant of the environment. Airlines have different PSS, right? They can be on Navitaire, Sabre, Amadeus, just the airlines represented today, and some of the customers we have today are on different PSS, right? They can have different PSPs and orchestrators. They can have an orchestrator or no orchestrator, actually. They can have a multitude of acquirers. Some airlines we've been speaking to have up to 30 acquirers. So imagine the landscape. Airlines will have different revenue accounting systems. They can have an in-house homegrown system. They can have Lufthansa revenue accounting system. They can have Amadeus revenue accounting system. They will have different ERPs as well in the SAP, Oracle, homegrown. A very different ecosystem per airline. And I think we really wanted to remain agnostic and integrate with any of those environments. That was a key principle for us. So our approach is really to fit into that existing environment. We're not asking airlines to redesign their current landscape. And what we will simply, and I put this into brackets because it's much more complex than just plugging something in, we will integrate the payment transactions from the sales side, from the capture side, from the settlement side, and the bank side. We will integrate those feeds into our solution. So as I'd like to say, it's not open heart surgery. We're not cracking open your PSS, your revenue accounting, or your ERP. We are integrating in that environment. And I think what's important is what Charlotte just mentioned. The landscape will evolve, right? You may choose another acquirer tomorrow. You may enter into a new country. You may choose to have or not have an orchestrator. What we wanted to make sure is that our solution would keep on scaling, would keep on adapting to its landscape as it evolves. So if tomorrow SAS or PAL decides to have a new acquirer, we'll need to be kept informed, obviously, prepare for it, and then integrate those feeds into the solution. So really being agnostic, being adaptable and scalable, it's really the most important part of our design today.
And I would like to add to that understanding airline processes, speaking the language, feeling the pain is very important. There are also like solutions out there that are applied in retail or in digital service, etc. But it's very difficult to wrap your head around all the complexities, all the use cases, all the exceptions if you don't come from the industry. I think that's key for me, a key decision criterion if I advise airlines in this space. But going back to Anna, you had you run your own project, right? So from your perspective, how did it? How do you come to the conclusion that it would be best to focus on this in the first place? You already explained to that, but also to work with a partner like MNC.
I think we never, in fact, for us, it was never really an option to do it in-house. I mean, it was too complex. I think from a journey perspective, I think just to explain the journey we went through, I think it started with our shifting to a new revenue accounting system, right? I mean, that was the first thing we had to do. We had to go to more sustainable revenue accounting systems. We switched over to ARA. And before we could even start this project on payment reconciliation, we had to make sure that ARA was working the way we expected to, right? Because that's the main source of the data, the interlink with PSS and then to ARA, because that was going to feed into this reconciliation. So to be honest, at the time, 3 years ago, when I met MNC, no one was offering this product, no one. I went to the IATA Finance Conference, and it was only MNC at the time that could understand what I was looking for at the ticket level. And I don't know, Joanna, I think at the time it wasn't even called Adabra. It was just the product had no name. And so the journey was quite interesting because do first your ARA system, then we started working with MNC for the system integration, and we had 10, right? So we had 10. We had to prioritize clearly the bigger ones to start with. And over a 9-month, 10-month period, while we were doing the onboarding of each payment channel, we even had to change acquirers. There was one swap that we had to do. And when you talk about flexibility, that's one flexibility you have when you have a service provider, right? So we were able to swap, and they're in the process now of coming into the reconciliation system. That was critical to us because it allows us to make sure that every acquirer is able to capture the data we really need. That's one critical aspect of any reconciliation project as well. So it took us about 9 months to get the first batch of acquirers into the system. And I think we haven't looked back. Then by the way, after that, we swapped over to a new ERP with S4HANA. So it was like a journey, right? You start stabilizing your accounts receivable system, your AR revenue accounting system. You do the reconciliation. And all of this feeds into a middleware that then gets into the ERP. So today, we've got it. We've got it end to end. But it was like step by step.
Mm-hmm. So for me, that also means coming from the front end that you need an overarching strategy, right? From all the way at the start to all the way at the end, and making sure all these components, but also all the stakeholders are on board and see the added value of being on the same rails and not having individual KPIs and focusing on that, because that's thing where in general things go wrong when people have their own targets and not think about what happens downstream or what happens upstream. And maybe Charlotta and Gustav, from your perspective, you work with multiple acquirers, you have a lot of alternative forms of payments, APMs, and maybe a little bit more in detail, because there's not an acquirer has its own way of reporting. APMs might have a time delay, or might be a pull versus a push. Like it's not, you can only issue the tickets once the payments reported to you, whilst an acquirer would you would already issue the tickets based on the authorization, then you receive the funds later, right? So is that the complexity that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, to a large extent it is. All are a little bit differently in their behavior. So as this process always had been manual, obviously there are different manual processes to handle those differences. But what we were looking for was really to see if we could streamline it in a better way, to have a system helping us sort out the differences. And to make a process that is more streamlined, because in that way we could more easily adapt to a new provider going forward. So what we were looking for with the system was that hubs to connect our forms of payment and the differences between them. It also makes it more easy to create processes behind the scene for the reconciliation people, for the accounting people, to actually work more in a streamlined way. And that in turn makes it more easy to introduce a new form of payment, because the heavy lifting is then done already with the system. So obviously it's a new acquirer would need a new integration, but in the end the process at the airline would remain a streamlined process.
And maybe a bit of housekeeping in the middle. There's a Q&A box in GoTo. If you have questions, please leave them there. We'll try to answer them at the end of the session later in the hour. So Joanna, obviously, I guess in payments in general, there's happy scenarios, the big chunk of the volume that flows as planned, but there's also many use cases where things don't go as planned or get reversed. If it's a refund, if it's a chargeback, if it's a voucher, how do you deal with these kind of exceptions? Because again, I think that's where a lot of the manual work and a lot of the delays happen if you don't treat them properly or don't catch them early on. Can I say it like that?
Yeah. No, I think you're correct, Paul. When the happy flow happens, I think you almost don't need a system, right? You sell, everything goes fine for your capture, your settlement. It is banked, it's in your home currency. Nothing is taken away from that amount from day one. Happy flow, right? The problem is, in most cases in the airline industry, it will be I wouldn't say a unhappy flow, but it will be a different flow, right? So the payment can happen in a different currency, and you will have to deal with that when you do your reconciliation into your accounting currency later on. And that's of course something we cater for. There can be also changes across, in these different steps. So as there be a refund, for instance, on that payment. And also a lot of things can happen at every single one of the steps. So there could be a transaction that is missed. There could be a whole file that is missed. That can happen. Very often the file doesn't disappear, but the file is delayed. So that's what we see quite a lot. And I see Anna is nodding because we've seen some of those things happening at PAL. So, the file didn't disappear, but somehow you got a 15 days delay. Why did you get a 15 days delay into something that is so important for your cash flow position? So of course you need to track. And as Anna was saying, you need to track at transaction level. So we make sure that we have the right reception of those files, but within those files, we make sure also that every single transaction is tracked. Otherwise, you're not closing your book in a clean manner, right? You don't have this auditability to come back to the transaction level and say, oh, there was one ticket there in that batch that didn't follow the happy flow. So really that's a key design principle as well that we have, looking at the full files component, but also looking at the transaction component in order to follow the happy flow or the unhappy flow. And I think the second thing that happens for airlines as well across the board, and that is sitting a little bit as unapplied payments or unreconciled, as we say, you may be getting 100 euro for a ticket up front. At the end in the bank, you got 98. Okay? So first, you're lucky if you have reconciled those two. Okay, but where did the 2 euros go? Okay, what happened during the lifetime? Is it your payment fee, for instance, that got triggered in between, and how much was that? And can you report on that? So when you close your book at the end, you got 98, which corresponds to your ticket value, but you got 2 that correspond, for instance, from your payment fees that were deducted by your acquirer. So this flow needs to be neat, right? Because otherwise you always end up with these €2 of balance where you're not clearly and 100% sure where it belongs, and you cannot get the right visibility on those amounts. So really, the motto is giving visibility and control, and also looking at the financial impact of any issue, any unhappy flow, as you call it, Paul, that may happen during the lifetime of a transaction, and be able to report on those. So detect the anomalies, detect the unexpected delays. Delays can happen. If your contract says you will get the money in 72 hours from your acquirers, that's fine. But then if you are 5 days later and you still haven't received that money, then an alarm should ring, right? An alarm should ring, and your agent should be looking at the case and say, why do we have another 48 hours delay on that cash flow? So really it's making sure you get better visibility and control, file level, transaction level, so you can audit the whole thing. But it's also making sure that any impact you see across the chain is duly reported and on time so that you can have an action on it. Reporting and reconcile things is a good thing, but having an action on it is really the most important. So what happened? Was that a technical glitch? Was that an issue with your acquirer? Was that an issue with your bank? I mean, the investigation you need to do at the end is the most important part. And we want to make sure that agents focus on that part and not just looking at a needle in a haystack, as we say, trying to reconcile transactions from point of sale to bank, but making sure that they focus on the anomalies, that means business, that means cash flow, that means revenue for the airline. So that's really what we focus on in terms of product design, so that we give more productivity to the agent to cater for the easy scenario. But whenever there's an anomaly that needs to be detected, flagged, and worked on, then we take this out, and the agents should spend more of their time, on this, on tracking this from a business perspective, than trying to match, transactions that don't match in a manual manner.
Yeah. And I think it's a buzzword nowadays, but AI will help also moving forward with streamlining those processes and only focus on those things that need, let's say, human interaction. Maybe I can go back to Anna, because I definitely value your point about gross versus net and reconciling the costs that are applied as part of the reconciliation flow, or the money flow, the remittance flow. But Anna, I mean, you're being CFO of Philippine Airlines and looking after treasury as well. Currency FX change. You sell in many currencies. You get settled in less currency, so there's conversion happening along the way. Based on what rate is that done, how frequently is that refreshed, what's the markup? I mean, there's still a lot. There's kind of a black box in a lot of cases for non-treasury people, right? So, can you maybe just shed some light on how you look at FX and accepting payments in different currencies from a Philippine Airlines perspective? Because you're in a region with many currencies, right?
Yeah. So I think one of the interesting things I think we benefited from this exercise, reconciliation, is honestly one of the major unreconciled items we had were all these MCP payments, because they weren't capturing the original currency and the actual currency you get, right? So it was so hard to match until we got this through the reconciliation process. What do we have now? We now have visibility of the original currency of the transaction and how much we receive. If, for example, we elected to receive a Thai baht transaction, for example, into US dollars. So at the beginning, you sort of just rely on what is provided to you. And the next action point clearly for us is to look at that differential. And one of the things that we are looking at is there now an opportunity for us to just take on the currency, I guess the currency conversion responsibility over the acquiring bank, or we let it go? So those are things that we now have visibility. And in fact, one of the things that is the next phase of what this project gives us. It allows us better visibility of our actual position in each currency that we collect, and vis-a-vis the actual currency of the transaction. So I can tell you how much dollars I get, how much yen I collect, how much. Every currency now is so much easier. I guess the other advantage of it is Joanna mentioned the missing payments. We've had that. We've caught a number of times where in one file, we were expecting, let's say, 100 transactions and the payment was just 91, and we caught it. And that has been very helpful to us. And in most cases, even the bank doesn't realize some things fell off. But clearly, those are the main advantages of having a robust reconciliation that's very timely. So it also allows us to do better payment, liquidity planning, because I see how much cash I'm expecting from the sales. So from a finance perspective, the benefits are quite immense. In addition to that, from a P&L perspective, because of the ability to show our quality of receivables because of the reconciliation, PAL has been able to reduce significantly our general provision for doubtful accounts. So we have been able to justify that with our auditors, just because now we can show how much we've matched payments.
Very good, very good. I think we have about 10 minutes till we move into the Q&A. If we have questions, I see a couple. A bit of a look into the future, always my favorite topic. I see two main things, but let's start. And Charlotta, we've been in these kind of sessions before, so I know that you've been very active on the IATA front in the working groups. Modern airline retailing, offer order, order accounting. I think it's a bit of a crystal ball. I don't see a lot of details yet outside maybe of the IATA working groups where I'm not part of. Maybe can you shed some light on how you see maybe accounting in general, revenue accounting in general, but specifically payment reconciliation moving forward? Can you shed some light on that?
Well, I think it's a lot of discussions on what offer and order will mean for the airlines going forward. Instead of having tickets and EMDs to reconcile, it will be order based. And I think the aim for this in this activity from IATA is to make the airlines become more as a normal retailer, not having its own structure. So what's going on very much within IATA is to look into how all processes can be streamlined and how we can reflect what's happening in other industries as well. So for instance, now there is an activity ongoing to look at the different ISO formats that is used among other retail sectors, and see how that can be implemented within the airline industry. And this activity might be not more payment oriented for the moment, streamlining the payment response codes and the end-to-end payment process. But overall, there are also activities going on trying to describe the whole financial process end to end and see what do the order format bring for us going forward. So IATA is doing architectures describing these opportunities to the airlines. In the end, it's always the airline themselves that obviously decide how to implement new formats and when to do it. But I think it's an interesting opportunity to really deep dive into the processes of an airline when transforming into offer and orders, not only trying to squeeze it in the format that we already have. So this is, for instance, then the reconciliation is a very good process to actually deep dive into to see where do you want to go going forward.
Yeah. Because I think when preparing for the transition, at least you have to have the foundation needs to be robust and so that you can build on top of it and not that it's unstable, right? And Joanna, last week we did a panel on this topic, and one of the I just highlight one of them because I think it's a recurring thing. The whole like Amazon of for airlines becoming the next Amazon. Let's not go into too much detail there, but I think there's also looking into the future you have a pay-in reconciliation, obviously, but there's also, if once you start selling more third-party ancillaries, you also start to reconcile your payouts as well, right?
Absolutely, Paul. So I think one good point is what Charlotta is mentioning is payment should not be an afterthought in that process. And we've seen a lot of focus being put on the offer side, right? But I would say the complexity, which I think the offer side is quite well handled these days in terms of providers and the way the airlines have adopted it. But I think the complexity for us around the table will hit when the customer click on the pay button, right? That's what happens afterwards. That will get really, really complex. And as Charlotta was saying, if we continue using the old recipe, the old formats, the old flows of tickets for managing orders, I think we might enter into a difficult transition period because the back end again will not follow and the accounting and finance will not follow. And part of that is obviously the airlines, if you follow the offer and order goal, is to become a marketplace, right? The airline will be selling their seats, but they will also be selling something else. So you would have a passenger coming in and buying a ticket on SAS for, I don't know, 1,000 euros, but they will add to that a nice cruise in the Scandinavian area, and they will add a tour and maybe an airport pickup. So the airline will collect money on their behalf, but they also will be collecting payments for third parties. And I think this payout component will demultiply the complexity for airlines. And if you look at, we often speak about Amazon, but let's look at other giants like Booking.com or Airbnb. What are they? We had Booking.com on stage last week in our conference. They are a financial stack. First and foremost, they are not a travel company. They are a financial company. And what they put in place is really the necessary financial stack in order to collect revenues, redistribute, keep commissions, you name it. It's an extraordinary machine that you have behind the scene at Booking.com to make sure your pay in and your payouts are always in sync, and you collect your share, but make sure you also pay your third parties in due course. So I think if you push the logic of an order, airlines will be collecting money on behalf of others. Today, airlines do that, but they do that only with other airlines, right? They do that with Interline, they do that with codeshare. But this has been highly, highly regulated, right? We all have the IATA manual on our desk, and we know how to share revenues between ourselves. But when you talk about a cruise company, this is not regulated. IATA will not say, how do you pay taxes and when do you pay your cruise company if you have collected revenues for them. So I think it's something that is coming slowly. So we have a bit of time to think about it. But I think overall, from a payment and financial flow perspective, we need to think about this end-to-end stack that will be managing pay-ins and payout, and the reconciliation will be at both sides. So really, I think it's something that is not really focused on at the moment. But I think airlines will need to slowly but surely get into that direction. And the most important part is that they will have to manage the transition, right? Because you will still have a ticket world, and then you will move to the offer world with more complex financial flows. So really interesting to see, but I think it's interesting to see as well from your question, from Charlotta's comments, and what we heard last week as well, that people are thinking now, okay, let's think about payment. Let's think about our financial flows so that we don't end up in a situation where, again, the front end is very glossy, very sexy, very nice, but then you don't reconcile your payment in the background. And if you have third parties in the equation, they will not be very happy that you don't reconcile your payment in due course. So really very interesting to see that this is becoming a priority as well for airlines to sort out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would say, well, you can become a marketplace, a platform, but if you then have to have a complete floor in your headquarters filled with people doing manual reconciliation or manually paying suppliers, no, that's not going to work in the future either, right? Then you need to really step up there. And maybe Anna, from Philippine Airlines perspective, if you look at the transition to offer order modeling and retailing, is that something that is currently already top of mind? Is it already in progress? And how do you see it from a finance perspective?
Oh, it's already in progress. We've started NDC. The finance team was very much involved in the project, so we were involved in it. So actually, because of our ticket level view, the payment was not an issue. It was really more a content development more than anything. Once we started that, it just goes through. You don't even notice today the difference. I think the evolution in the future is not just airlines, right? It's not restricted within your own inventory. The going forward is how do you broaden that? And I think if we start this ticket level view, it's almost like invoicing at that level. Then it's an easier transition. I think if we take it at a ticket level, transaction level, it just makes life easier when you transition to an NDC offer order world.
Yeah. Because one of the things that I remember that IATA stated was like with NDC, finally, the airlines can take back control of payments. But that also means that if you take it away from the agency where they are the much of record and then they get basically built by the BSP, that's like you said, Anna, fully automated and works seamlessly already for, I don't know, since the early 70s of the last century, I think. But once you then bring it into your own domain, that indirect channel becomes your responsibility. You accept card payments directly on your own stack, but also alternate forms of payment. And all of a sudden, it also becomes your liability, your responsibility, your problem, right? So, and that sounds nice, but and maybe you save some costs, but you also put a lot of stuff on your plate. And if you're understaffed, and I think that's one of the things that happened during the pandemic, that there was a lot of reshuffling of staff and a lot of knowledge left the airlines. So it's not like every single airline is set up from a payments perspective, reconciliation perspective, fully to deal with it themselves. And then a community is important. Help from suppliers is important, but also exchange of information. That's why we're also here to create awareness about this topic and to make other airlines aware that they need to start preparing for this journey and make sure that their technical architecture, their staffing, their mindset is in place to be able to deal with that. Let's see, we have about 7 minutes left, I see. Chris, do we have questions?
Yeah, we have some questions. So first one, what stakeholders in my company do I need to bring together for a reconciliation project? So over to you guys.
Yeah. Anna, would you like to, from your perspective, who's involved?
I guess for us, because the end-to-end was controlled by finance, it was not as hard because it became our agenda, right? It became our project. But we obviously needed a lot of support from IT. So IT was a key business partner in the project. Obviously, the support of our stakeholders, our board was there because of the unapplied payment issue, right? So it became such a high priority when I joined to get this fixed. But I think critical is the IT partnership. When you onboard any new payments, I think it's also important that they realize, at least on our side for us, that even if payment is under finance, that we're part of that commercial team discussing that at the beginning. We're not an afterthought. I think that's also and in the process of looking at your acquiring banks, I also don't make any decisions without our commercial team. So it's really a partnership to make this whole thing work.
On the SAS side? You're here together, so that's already something.
I think we agree, Gustav,
sure.
with what Anna said. It's very much the same for us.
Okay.
And I think, Paul, if I may add, because
go ahead.
A question. It's a very good question. It's an excellent question, and we get it from many, customers or prospects. Because in what we see in several airlines is that payment might be just looking at the business side of things and just the storefront side of things in certain airlines, and is disconnected from maybe the financial side of things or the accounting side of things. So when you have everything under one remit, like Anna, you're lucky in a way, but in many airlines it's not the case, and then you need to bring together your colleagues from the revenue accounting side, from the finance side, and obviously the IT support and the IT project support as well into this is absolutely key. But it's making sure, again, as you said at the beginning, Paul, the storefront, the front end meets with the back end as well and talk, because whenever you launch anything like this, or when you launch a new orchestration project, or when you launch new acquirers, etc., if the back end doesn't follow again, you fail. Right, you will have some KPIs working at the storefront, but then your overall KPIs as a company will not be positive. So really, it's having these colleagues and departments speaking together. Sometimes it's naturally done because they all belong to under the same. They're all under the same roof. Sometimes they are in different departments within the airline. So it's sometimes a bit of a challenge, but that's really what we would encourage.
I think you made a good point there, because also in my experience, like if you, as an airline, if you select, for instance, a new acquirer for a new channel for a country, or just like a global one, a secondary, tertiary, make sure as part of the RFP, the selection process, that this is part of it, right? And that how the data flows, if the level 2, level 3 data, the use of the unique references, that the knowledge they have on their side, the support they can give on the consultant side during implementation. If you do it right the first time, that saves you a lot of pain, right, later on. So, but select the right provider that comes with the right package, not only maybe a low cost, but also with understanding, with systems, etc., reporting, and that will definitely help you in the longer term to streamline the process. Okay, maybe one more question, Chris? Is Chris still there? I don't see Chris. Okay. Now, maybe then what we can do is, because we only have a couple of minutes left, Paul, if you can go to the Venture slide, please.
I think we might have lost the American.
No, I had a question. Sorry,
you're here.
Someone, I think Paul muted me. Paul Van Allen. Someone muted me. It wasn't me. So I have a question for you. There is a question for Anna, actually. So you mentioned you were newer to the airline industry. What stood out to you as different about the airline finances?
Well, everything was, to begin with, the kind of ticketing system, right? There's no real standard pricing. I mean, that in itself has its own complexities. And secondly, all the different currencies that you work with, those just consistently it is what makes the whole reconciliation very, very complex. And I think in the case of airlines, it transitioned from this world where everybody was dealing with agents, right? Especially for us as a full service carrier. And then suddenly there's this plethora of payment channels. And at the beginning, you just want to keep adding payment channels, because you want to give that flexibility to your passengers. But the back office is coping with it. Up to now, we still have that. I mean, we still have challenges on that. Every time we have to add a new payment channel, you have to bring that into development. So I think that's what makes this very unique. And the volume is just phenomenal, right? In terms of number of tickets you issue with different distribution outlets. So it's very complex.
So thanks for that. So actually, Paul, we're at the end of the hour. So any final takeaways, Paul Van Alphen?
Yeah, so maybe, well, I'd like to thank the audience and also the panelists, obviously, and maybe just hand it over to Joanna for a quick wrap up of the session.
Yes, first of all, many thanks for the audience to attend the webinar. I know many people will listen to it today, and some people will listen to it in replay a bit later, depending on where they are in the world. I would like to thank, of course, our panelists and our moderator, Paul, for taking us through that topic. So maybe just one key takeaway, payment reconciliation is not just a back office function. It has to be integrated with your commercial strategy, with your payment strategy overall. And we would really welcome, the opportunity to continue the conversation. So you can contact us. You've got my email here, but you can contact us also on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Also look together at the challenges you might have. We know that in every different country of the world, we have different challenges, different setup per airline. So really happy to look through that together in a consultative mode. And we are also learning every time we hear from airlines, every time we hear from travel actors. So we really love that interaction. So keep it growing. Let's continue the exchange. Connect with us either directly or on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to continue this very fruitful exchange. And thanks again for the panelists, and thanks again to you, Paul, for organizing this.
So thanks, everyone. We're signing off. Just one final thought. Please link with all of the speakers on LinkedIn. You can see their names. So go ahead and link with them. And with that, thanks to the panel. Thanks to the audience. And we're signing off. So thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris and Paul, for waking up so early. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.